Hey everybody, it's Jim of Animateducated, and today you'll learn about children's book author DJ Steinberg and his journey into writing children's books. DJ has generously offered an autographed bundle of books by DJ Steinberg, including the brand new releases Christmas Here I Come and Hanukkah Here I Come. Visit the Animateducated blog or the Animateducated Facebook page and fill out the Jot form to enter the giveaway. The deadline is Friday, October 15th at 12 noon. The winner will be picked randomly and announced on the upcoming Halloween episode of Animateducated. So enter today, don't delay. And now, please enjoy my interview with DJ Steinberg here on Animateducated. So today we have a special guest, a children's book author. His name is DJ Steinberg, and he's written about 25 books so far. And he's my next guest on Animateducated. Do you go by David or do you go by DJ? I mean, how do you?
So my secret identity is DJ Steinberg. I'm letting you in on my secret, and just you and the rest of the educated audience. But there's like a few million David Steinbergs in the world. Everywhere I've been, in college, where I lived, I had a neighbor, David Steinberg. There's a lot of David Steinbergs out there. And my theory, I grew up in the shadow also of David Steinberg, the comedian.
I was
quite a famous comedian. He used to co-host the Johnny Carson show when Johnny took vacation, and he was, he's still a big deal. He's become a director and done all kinds of great things in his career. And my theory was always, as long as all the other David Steinbergs in the world are doing better than me, I'm happy to be part of the group. So one day, after I got my first book published, I was looking online at the bio that they had on the Penguin site. And it was another David J. Steinberg, in fact, who publishes with a different imprint within Penguin at the time. And his book was called Erotic Impulses. And he did photography that was quite anathema to the the wholesome children's reader books that I was working on. And it gave all his credentials as being a top erotic photographer. And I thought, this confusion, this time I may be done in by my name. And I had also I went to a workshop where they were talking about, as an author, you are a brand, and you should think about how you publish your books. And I thought, well, I should probably make myself a little more unique. My initials, it's not like I went very far to come up with my pen name, but I did decide to go with my initials just to differentiate me.
You started off not as a children author, but you started off in doing production.
My interests as a kid included picture books. Writing children's books was always something that was fascinating to me. Like when I looked at them as a little kid, I remember thinking that would be cool to try to make that. And I think my first grade teacher, Miss Stam, helped me make a little book of my own, with cardboard and shelf paper, and she helped me bind my my little stories and illustrations together. But my real infatuation, my main infatuation as a kid, was animation. Part of it was we didn't have a TV in our house. We didn't have computers back then, kids. We were like, it was a different time. I had very little media exposure. So when my parents brought us inevitably to whatever the latest Disney release was every year, because they used to re-release their films on a 7-year rotation. And as soon as I grew up in Chicago, as soon as like Snow White was playing at the Northtown Theater, we were there. My parents were that media they thought was okay. And I was it was such a powerful, immersive experience. And as a young artist myself, I would sit, because I wasn't watching TV or playing on the computer, I guess I was sitting and drawing a lot. I was trying to draw their characters and just fascinated, like, how do they make them come alive like that? And how does that work? And I was sort of craving any information I could get on that. I think I found, wait a minute, I brought something just as a, so I think I found this book in the library in Chicago, and I kind of read it cover to cover and just, tried to soak up anything I could. And so that animation sort of became, kind of ran away as like the lead, the lead interest, as I was growing up. I think that, to be honest, book making and making animated shows or features, very similar elements. It's the combination of words and pictures and storytelling in some kind of preset form. That in some ways books is just like a very simplified version of what we do in animation with a lot of the same elements. So I was making little animated films with my dad's Super 8 camera on our basement floor in Chicago, and somehow by some miracle got an opportunity to meet with Don Bluth, John Pomeroy, and Gary Goldman when they were first starting their own studio after leaving Disney in 1980. And I got a summer gig. I think they were taken by this little Pisher who was so enthusiastic about animation. They said, come help us for the summer. And I didn't know, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. They handed me a can of varnish, sent me out to the parking lot in Studio City to varnish their new animation desks, because they were just setting up a studio and they were broke right from the start. So, I was a much cheaper solution than having the carpenter they were paying to make the desks finish them. And I learned a lot about varnishing. I learned a lot about drywall and construction, because I was helping Joe, the cameraman, put up walls and kind of help equip the studio. And there were probably about 30 people working at the studio. We were making a little piece. They were finishing a little piece for Xanadu, the movie, where Olivia Newton-John turns into a bird and a fish, and I don't know, all kinds of magic ensues. And they were just starting on Secret of NIMH. They had done the owl sequence, which was sort of their test piece that got them the funding. And somehow I managed to get in with that crowd when they were first starting. I went to film school during the winters at Northwestern in Chicago. And every summer I came out and basically interned at the studio. And I did pass an in-between test and started in-betweening on Secret of NIMH and Dragon's Lair and the things that they were making back then. And kind of was working my way up as an artist, thinking that was my, I wanted to be an animator, and that was, my ambition. And then Don, after I graduated from college, Don pulled me aside one day and said, I wonder if you would consider being my assistant director. I was like, I didn't even have the presence of mind to say, what is that? What does an assistant director do? I was just like, oh, thanks, Don. Yeah, that'd be great. And it was really kind of more of a proto sort of production manager type job. It was, there was a slightly different structure to the animation production teams back then, kind of coming out of the way Disney used to work. And the assistant director would sit outside the directors and the editors' offices and try to keep everything basically manage the process and make sure that everything was in order and communicate things out as needed to be communicated. So that sort of grew me into more of a production manager, then producer, and then executive. I helped set up a company for Turner, back when they bought Hanna-Barbera, and they set up for a fleeting 5 years, they set up a wonderful company we had called Turner Feature Animation, where we made two ne'er-do-well movies, but I'm still proud of them. It was a Page Master and Cats Don't Dance. And then I ended up joining Disney for about 10 years in the feature animation group there. Then went to Canada with my family for about 5 years, and ran a studio in Toronto, which was a great experience. We made some movies there as well, and then came back and I was working at Nickelodeon full time until just a few months ago when I got a 12-book contract from Penguin. And I thought, aha, this other little interest I had sort of, weaving along the side of animation sort of took off in a big way. And I decided I've got to go chase this dream. So that is what I'm doing now. So I have to say that having children was sort of the big moment of inspiration, because for those of you viewers of Animateducated, those of you who have children know that as soon as you have your first kid, your house is suddenly inundated with kids' baby stuff, and a lot of books came with that, that package. So suddenly I was surrounded again by books that I was familiar with from when I had been a kid, but it sort of took me back to that sort of dormant interest. And the first thing I did actually was not consciously thinking, oh, I'm going to become a children's author. I just started writing some silly pieces, sort of inspired by Shel Silverstein, and that sort of poetic style, but like from our first baby's point of view. Now, our first baby is now 24 years old. So that kind of puts it on a timeline. I self-published my little book of baby.
Oh, cool. Oh, great.
It was called Confessions of a Milk Addict. And I did my own little illustrations for this one. So this
Sure.
never got published. Why didn't it get published? Because I didn't know who the hell the audience. Heck, excuse me. This is a family show, right?
No, not really. Yeah.
I don't know who the hell the audience.
There you go.
So I really wrote. I used a juvenile form to write for adults, and I don't think any publisher knew what or knows to this day what to do with this. So I realized at some point it's very easy to self-publish and cheap to self-publish books. So I self-published a few, and I just give them out to people who have babies, and that's my standard baby gift. All right,
nice.
so this is called Dirty Diapers. A warning that a little bit of grossness may be contained herewith. When a diaper is damp and curdy, there's a good chance that it's dirty, and the guests may start to twitch and grab their coats. If you sniff behind the diaper and the whiff is growing riper, then you might just pay attention to these notes. Grab a bag of brand new diapers with a box of Tushy wipers, and don't forget the baby when you go. Find a spot where guests are not. Find a table, find a cot, set your things down, and get ready for the show. First, untape the dirty diaper. Hold your breath, don't get hyper as you peel the diaper down to take a peek. If it's a baby boy, beware. Better cover up down there to protect in the event he springs a leak. Next, you thoroughly review texture, clarity, and hue, because your spouse is going to give you a pop quiz. Or when conversation drags during dinner, you can brag, it was thick and yellow, honey, like Cheese Whiz. There's 1,000 variations to your pride and choice creations, and each and every one's a work of art. Some diapers drip with golden gouache. Some sing out with orange squash. Some are fruity, some are mellow, some are tart. So now you're having fun. Tell your baby, job well done. Then lift those legs and wipe up down below. Tuck your takeout like a gift so the contents shouldn't shift and your precious cargo's all wrapped up to go. Now, you might think that it's icky. It may all sound rather sticky, but it's truly one of life's most squishy joys. How good it makes you feel to survive such an ordeal, to have bonded with this baby girl or boy. So next time a diaper's drippy, don't get nauseous, don't get snippy. What's the hurry? Do not rush off or adjourn. If perhaps I've been too wordy, jump right in next time he's dirty. Don't be shy. I do believe this one's your turn.
Oh, that's perfect. Great. Yeah.
That sort of set me on this course of writing. It was, not clear who I was writing for, but I was just into it. And I think that's the way a lot of things in life start. I mean, if I had had any business sense at all in 1980, I would not have gone into animation, right? But it's sort of like, it's always like that love of something that kind of drives you forward. And this sort of organically, like, just started oozing out of me, and so I think I was at Disney at the time, and I talked to some of the executives there who knew people in publishing, and I think we had our own publishing arm, Hyperion, anyway. So I just sort of tossed this thing right and left to whoever knew anybody, and I got several very lovely rejections, just saying, this is just, so charming and funny, but it's, we don't publish anything like this. And there was sort of that aha moment of realizing, oh, I actually have to do some market research and actually know who these companies are and what they do and what they publish and how. So it was a whole process then of trying to figure out how to do that. It was sort of overwhelming. Somebody tipped me off that there was an organization. There's a SCBWI, which stands for Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So scbwi.org is their organization. It started 50 years ago. They just had their 50th anniversary. A children's author support and illustrator support group, basically, that's now international. There's chapters everywhere, I think in every country around the world. And it was started by two young writers 50 years ago. They're not so young anymore, in Los Angeles. And they started with a summer conference, where they brought a bunch of children's authors together. And that conference has grown and grown. And that's what I got turned on to, that, the SCBWI conference is happening in, next month. And I'm going, the what? And so I ended up there. And that was really sort of the start of making sense of this world of children's book publishing and sort of understanding what is that marketplace, who are the players within it, even just the code of, like, how do you how do you submit work? How do you query? What's your cover letter? How are you supposed to format things? This whole idea of critique groups, which is so much part of the culture of many authors, and doing their work of finding like-minded people who you find comfort in tearing apart each other's work, complimenting and tearing apart each other in a very constructive way to help everybody succeed. That's something that, I kind of learned from that and set up a critique group. And, that sort of all drove me forward to ultimately getting my first book, published, which was an amazing, amazing thing.
So what was your first book that you did get published?
This was the first book I got published. So I sent the story here, and again, this kind of goes back to the theme that I was talking about of like everything that I've ever had success with in life comes from just following a passion and not listening to the voice of reason or other people's voices of reason. So the first conference I went to at the Society of Children's Book Writers was every single publisher, editor, agent who got up to speak to do workshops said, Ixnay on rhymes. Don't submit rhymes. Nobody wants rhymes. And I understand why they say that. To this day, there's a bit of a bias against rhyming tests because there's a lot of really bad. Rhyme is hard to do when it's done well. Like Dr. Seuss, these guys make it look easy. It just sort of flows. It's all easy breezy, and the content flows with the rhyme and meter. But the truth is, there's a lot of bad rhyme on the way to getting to that place. And I've learned so much. I thought I was a pretty good rhymester back when I started, and now I look at my old stuff and I go, oh my God, like trying to make things sound natural, not be forced by the rhyme to, kind of go to like, okay, suddenly my story is about a duck because that's what rhymed with truck, but like knowing what your story is and then, making the rhyme serve you, all of that is like a learned skills. Anyway, I digress. People did not want rhymes. I heard at the second conference I went to, this editor named Bonnie Bader, who was then with Penguin, stood up and said, I'm doing a series of reader books, which were books, leveled books that could be read by kids themselves in the early grades. And she said, I am thinking that there would be a market for humorous poetry books if I can find some humorous poets. And I heard a very loud, inside my head only, but I heard a very loud ding. And I quickly scraped together some of my rhymes, sent them off to Bonnie Bader. And her assistant editor called me several months later and said, we like your work. We'd like you to send more. And then it took a year before it turned into we'd like to do a book with you, and that was Grasshopper Pie, and it was a really wonderful format. It was the incredible Adrian Sinnott, did the illustrations for it. So this book was like a series of 5 little poetic stories. So what was fun is that it was storytelling. There's a little beginning, middle, and end, even though they're short stories. This book in particular, I got lucky because Grasshopper Pie got picked up by Scholastic book fairs and clubs, and suddenly when it came out, it was already a big success. It sold like immediately like 160,000 copies or something like that. And so this led to, more in the same line, but all kinds of other books as well. You'll never meet an elephant as lovely as Louise. She wears a very lovely trunk that curls down to her knees. And she's really quite polite. She says, thank you. She says, please, but she never covers up her trunk when she has to sneeze. Her mama says, remember, but Louise will just forget. So if her trunk begins to twitch, beware, you might get wet. Her friends will all skedaddle when they hear a sniffle brewing. They hold their ears and scrunch their eyes each time she starts achooing. When I'm in classrooms with kids, I point to them and we pre-rehearsed that they're going to go achoo when I point at them. Achoo, her sneezes echo far across the grassy plains. Achoo, they twirl zebras' tails and tangle lions' manes. One day she met a chimpanzee out selling some bananas. Achoo, it rained banana peels for days through the savannas. At recess time, while jumping rope, she couldn't squelch a sneeze. Achoo, her friends all landed in some weeping wattle trees. Yes, there are really weeping wattle trees. I did my did my research on the savanna foliage. And though she said, "Excuse me," as politely as she could, I'm told Louise must now stay late each day at school for good. So whenever your nose tickles, please remember what to do. Learn a lesson from Louise and cover up when you achoo. There you go. Little sample for you.
How many books have you done, by the way?
So probably by the time this piece airs, I'll be at 25 books, which is a big milestone. Part of what's so fascinating about this medium, and it's really the same. I mean, in animation, you're collaborating with several hundred or sometimes several thousand people on a project, and everybody's bringing their own skills, and kind of if it's the right group of people working together, it's greater than the sum of the parts. And it's the same thing when a writer works with an illustrator. There's very little contact that is allowed really by the publisher's design between writer and illustrator. I'll have some input into like illustration descriptions, but even, in general, I'm told stay away from describing anything unless it's necessary for the story. Like if there's something in the text which is actually intended to be counterpoint to what you're seeing in the illustration. Sometimes for humor or for storytelling, you purposely do things that are at odds, then you have to obviously indicate it in a parenthesis. But if it's if it's apparent, don't over direct it. Just like a director doesn't want a screenwriter putting too many camera directions in there. It's like, no, that's their realm. And so truly, like, the illustrator has a lot of free reign to go and interpret, the text as he sees it. And, it's always, I've worked with many different illustrators over the years. And it's always, sort of a big moment when I get to see, usually I get to see roughs and then I get to see final color. But when that moment when you open up a file, or in the old days, the white padded envelope I would get with the big, galleys in it, and you get to see how it's been packaged, how it comes together. To be honest, sometimes I admit I've been a little bit underwhelmed. I'm like, ooh, that's not the way I pictured it, and I'm not sure. And then I'll either grow to like it, or I'll always just sort of skip quickly past those pages. But then on the other hand, there are so many times when I'm just over the moon with how much more the illustrator brought that I wouldn't have thought of, and how they plussed the story. Back when I was being a successful reader series writer for Penguin, I said, I want to do a series of graphic novels for middle grade kids, because there was so much literature at the time about how kids, reluctant readers, boys especially, not reading. And I know that I was a reluctant reader as a kid. And, I know this is funny because I said I was like infatuated by picture books and stuff, but I think that I was infatuated by picture books because there are only so many words and a lot of pictures. And as it went on, I was a really slow reader. And I'm quite sure that nowadays I would have been diagnosed with some form of a learning, challenge. But I was definitely like brought along in reading by comic books and by any books that had more, more white space, more pictures, sort of drew me in. And I thought now that, back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, excuse me, when graphic novels were first taking off, it was all teenagers, and there was a level of appropriateness for younger kids. I was like, we have to be serving that market. This is such a perfect, inroad for kids learning to read. But this series did pretty well. It was called, I called it Loud Boy, but then they were like, we think it should be Daniel Boom, which is it's a story about kids who have different learning challenges. One of them has essentially ADD. One of them essentially, one has no volume control. One is a chatterbox. One is just a destructo kid, has too much energy, like hyperactive. So basically, I have them sort of showing that there are deficits in their school life and in their everyday, lives turn into their superpowers, and they do save the world from all kinds of heinous, evil, ridiculous plots that they have to use all of those, loudness and chattiness and hyperactivity, to solve. So, the premise, kind of held up for four books, and then they said, okay, that's enough. so that was the end of that.
That's great.
Really, so out of the blue, this editor named Jane O'Connor called me. She's kind of famous because she invented the Fancy Nancy series, which has been very successful, turned into a TV show by Disney and all. And she was looking to partner with a writer to do a going to kindergarten book. She contacted me, thank God, asked me if I would submit a couple samples, and I was happy to oblige. And she was like, yeah, let's do this. So that turned into this book, Kindergarten, Here I Come, which was not meant to be a series. It was really just, initially filling what she saw as a gap. And this little book here somehow has sold well over 1 million copies now. So just as a sample from this book, best friends. Heather was my best friend this morning on the bus, but she talked so much to Shauna that I made my best friend Gus. But Gus said he was Noah's friend and wouldn't take it back, so I had to go and trade him for a better best friend, Zach. Zach wouldn't share the box of blocks, so what else could I do? At lunchtime, I sat right down by my newest best friend, Sue. Then Sue ate half my cupcake. I didn't say she could. In art, I was all by myself. I was done with friends for good. Then someone came and asked me, can we paint together? Remember, that was the same girl. So on the bus ride home again, my new best friend was Heather.
That's great. It's like how it loops back to the beginning person. So that's really nice. Yeah. Thanks. And it's nice. It's like almost like a guidebook for little kids, like what is first grade going to be like? I'm a little nervous, but you can read this book and kind of get an idea of like what you're going to be going through. Wow.
And it's kind of incredible how I went through so many books, over so many years, with just hoping and praying for my next book and just working hard enough to try to make that each book good enough to just get the next book. And that was really the goal for years. And I guess I've been doing this around 20 years. Since last year, in 2020, suddenly the book started taking off in a way, thanks in part to this book kind of leading the charge. But this started raising the whole, all the ships, and suddenly it was thinkable to like, hey, maybe I can write full time. Maybe I can do the dream, which is what I'm doing right now. As of this fall, I have 2 books: Christmas, Here I Come, and Hanukkah, Here I Come. We serve all. 2 separate books coming out for this coming holiday season. So this is a sample from one of the new books that's coming out. So it's called Santa Claus Around the World. If you meet a guy in Paris with a beard and bright red pants, that's Père Noël, not Santa Claus, because that's his name in France. But when he goes to Russia, Santa's red snowsuit gets tossed, because there he likes to dress in blue and go by Father Frost. He's Sinterklaas in Holland, Santa-san in Japanese, and if you're in Hawaii, Kanakaloka, if you please. But no matter what the name, kids round the world get that same tingle as they wait for old Saint Nick to come, or do you say Kris Kringle? This is a snippet from the Hanukkah Here I Come book, which is also coming out this holiday season. And I really do, I go back into my own memory banks of growing up with my grandparents who had a fierce sense of humor, and they were characters. And I really like embodying in books like this, trying to make even though you only get to know these characters for maybe a page or 2 in the course of the book, trying to make sure that you get a flavor of the family dynamic of the character. So this is just a little snippet of called A Favor for My Grandpa. And it's the grandparents are making potato latkes, which of course is a special delicacy just for Hanukkah. Bubby fries the latkes. Grandpa puts them on a platter. Oh no, he calls to me. I say, Grandpa, what's the matter? We cannot serve this latke. He gives it a good poke. Why not? I ask. He lifts it up. Well, look at it. It broke. What a terrible disaster. I really hate to waste it, but I guess I'll throw it out unless perhaps you want to taste it? I do. I grab that latke. It's so full of crispy flavor. Thanks a million, Grandpa winks. You sure did me a favor. So there you have a little A little
Right.
happy Hanukkah
Yeah.
poem, to go with the little happy Christmas poem.
So these two books are coming out, I guess, when?
For this holiday season, somewhere in the October zone, they should be available in stores, and they're already available for pre-order online. Oh, and
Oh, yes. Yes. So
I have a website.
Oh, yes. Please tell us.
I
What is it?
I would be remiss not to mention that
Yes.
you can see more about me and my books and link to the order pages and all that good stuff at www.djsteinberg.com. Even more of a self plug here. I hope that's okay, Jim.
Yeah, no problem.
But I am now that the plague hopefully is passing us, I'm looking to go visit schools. I'm sort of dying to have live events with kids again. So if you happen to have kids in school, especially in the early grades, and you think that they would appreciate having an author visit, let me know, or let the school know. They could reach out to me. Anyway, I'm just putting that plug in as well.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on Animated Educated and telling us all about what, a children author does and how do you got into the business and all that stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I love what you do. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you. So
yeah. All right. And thanks again for being on Animated Educated. It's great meeting you. And we'll stay in touch with you.
Thank you so much, Jim. This has been a pleasure.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Sayonara.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So that was DJ Steinberg. I want to thank him for coming on Animated Educated and talking about how he became a children's book author. Hopefully you learned something from this. I know I did. So if you like to see more interesting animated related interviews, you can press this button right here that actually subscribes you to this channel. And I also have some other interviews with other authors and producer directors. If you scroll down through those channel, you'll see them. And so I'm gonna put this one up right here, and this one over here. This might be a good one too. So so thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Animated Educated.